Hello everybody and welcome into After the Sandstorm here on Gamecock Central. Kendall Smith joined alongside of Collyn Taylor. And Collyn, I wish we were starting off on a better note this season with After the Sandstorm. South Carolina just suffering a 31-17 loss in their season opener here in Charlotte, North Carolina against the UNC Tar Heels. And heading into this game, there was a lot of expectation, there was a lot of excitement. So to start us off generally, because it was disappointing, what were your impressions of this team?
I think everything we thought about this team not came true, but the storylines that we had about this team were there. Spencer Rattler took a step forward, you saw pieces of that. The offensive line, there were question marks, you saw that. You saw question marks up front being able to stop the run, some youth and inexperience in the secondary. All of those things, good and bad, really started to show their head. A lot more concern, I think, with the offensive line than initially thought, but it kind of was what you thought it was going to be, and there were things that flashed in a good way and things that leave you now looking and staring at these next 4 games, 3 against FBS opponents, 2 on the road, concerned about what this record might look like going into a bye week.
Well, Furman's certainly not an easy opponent either. That's who South Carolina will face next week in their home opener. But Collyn, you said it there, some struggles from the offensive line. Spencer Rattler sacked 9 times tonight, 17 tackles for loss. Those are numbers that you just don't want to hear if you're a South Carolina fan. So realistically, how quickly do you think these offensive line issues can be fixed? Or do you think we're looking at a situation similar to last year where the O-line is just something we continue to talk about week after week?
I think the answer probably lies somewhere in the middle, where yes, there are probably things you can do to improve the offensive line, whether it's personnel change, whether that's different communication, something to improve it. But at some point, you are what you are with this offensive line, and even Shane Beamer said that post-game, and honestly now it kind of falls on Shane Beamer and the rest of that coaching staff to where if you are this offensive line and you are going to struggle at times, because I do think you're going to play better fronts coming up. In Georgia in a couple weeks, you have some really good fronts coming up. It's about designing an offense and tailoring what you do to maybe mitigate some of those issues. You saw a tinge of that tonight, maybe not to the level wanted, but now I think you are kind of what you are. There are probably some tweaks you'll make, but now it's up to this coaching staff to figure out what can we do schematically to change and get this to a place where the offensive line doesn't become a hindrance, or we're able to do either run the ball more efficiently, protect Spencer Rattler to a point where we are able to push the ball down the field, because you saw what could happen when he did, and find a way to really be this efficient, streamlined offense that we've talked about for the last 9 months since Dowell Loggins' time.
Well, speaking of schemes, we had the first chance tonight to see what Dowell Loggins has been putting together over the summer, throughout preseason, even into last spring. So, Collyn, what'd you think of what you saw from the offense tonight?
It's really hard to judge with just how porous and how much the offensive line struggled tonight. I mean, some plays were blown up really before they started. When they did block, and when you did, and Spencer Rattler had time to push the ball, you saw some amazing catches from Xavier Leggett. You saw some plays where they were able to get on the perimeter and create some chunk plays, and this offense was explosive at times, but the issue then became, well, when they weren't explosive, how were they doing? And they just weren't very good. And some of that, you might put back to scheme, but a lot of it was just the offensive line and struggling to get a push, and struggling to run the ball efficiently. And that's something that I think the jury is still very much out, just because you don't know what this offensive line looks like, and they really didn't put South Carolina in a position to succeed. And I say the offensive line, but just up front, tight ends, offensive line, protection, all of that, it just struggled so much that it's really hard to get a grasp on what that might look like if you're South Carolina.
You talked about it a little bit earlier. Xavier Leggett had a really good game for South Carolina. Spencer Rattler hung in there. I think he did as well as he could have, given the circumstances. I think we can all pretty much agree on that. You saw some really good flashes from Luke Doty as well, in a position that you probably didn't expect him to be in at the start of the night. So we'll finish off with a couple of positive thoughts from you, Collyn. What can you take away that are good things from tonight's game?
Xavier Leggett, first and foremost. A lot of the talk this offseason was, hey, he took a step forward. He took a step forward. And I was kind of in the I'll believe it when I see it. You've seen flashes from him, and I mean, contested catches, which was always a struggle for him. Making plays down the field, making plays in the open field. You saw exactly what you needed to from him against an FBS ACC defense. Jalen Kilgore comes in for an injured Nicky Minwari. There are going to be freshman mistakes. He probably had a few, but played fairly well. I think Debo Williams and Stone Blanton weren't perfect, but you see a more nimble, agile, athletic linebacker core than what you've had in the past. And like we talked about Spencer Rattler, when he had time to make some plays, I think he did a good job evading pressure at times, getting out of some situations. And I think you saw enough from him to say, okay, if we can figure out this protection issue, then all of a sudden we're able to do a lot more offensively.
Well, the Gamecocks certainly hoping for improvement in multiple areas as they head into their Week 2 matchup against Furman. Again, that's at Williams-Brice Stadium next week, so be sure to keep up with all of the coverage, not only on game day, but leading up to game day as well on GamecockCentral.com. And also follow us on our social medias at Gamecock Central on all platforms. Collyn, don't know when exactly I'll be back, so enjoy what might be the last After the Sandstorm, the first and last of the season, season 3. But don't worry, I'll still stick around.
You're going to be around
early on in the season, so plenty more to come from the South Carolina team, despite the disappointing loss. But we appreciate all of you joining us here on After the Sandstorm. He's Collyn Taylor. I'm Kendall Smith from here in Charlotte, North Carolina at Bank of America Stadium. We'll see you guys soon.